What if stepping outside tonight meant a fight for your very life? Imagine breath freezing before it leaves your lungs. No jackets, no cabins, just bone-chilling dark. Ice Age humans faced exactly that each night. They burned every rule of survival, stripping naked to cling for warmth, sleeping inside carcasses still dripping heat, even borrowing warmth from the dead. This is not a heroic mammoth hunt story. This is the brutal tale of how our ancestors bent every moral and rewrote every rule just to see the next morning. At temperatures of -40 degrees Fahrenheit, any fabric will fail to hold warmth. Animal skins stiffen and crack, fur loses much of its insulating power. In such brutal cold, early humans turned to the simplest solution. They pressed their bare bodies together in tight clusters using the warmth of each other as the primary thermostat. Archaeological evidence supports this practice. At sites across Ice Age Europe, sleeping areas show impressions of 15 to 20 people piled shoulder to shoulder. The ground bears the signature outlines of bodies nested so closely that no air pocket remained between them. These mass heat piles were the only way to keep frost from gathering on exposed skin. To contain this heat, they wrapped themselves in communal blankets made from large animal hides. Bone needles secured layers of fur blanket over the writhing mass of bodies, binding them like a living quilt. Those needles, often many inches long, reveal a technology dedicated to creating an unbroken thermal envelope. Psychologically, this huddling served more than physical need. It forged bonds of trust and cooperation. In modern emergencies, people instinctively huddle for warmth and reassurance. That same impulse traces back to our Ice Age ancestors. In the most extreme cold, body heat and close contact became a vital resource, one that shaped both survival and social cohesion. What grisly backup plans did they turn to when even human heat was not enough? When human heat piles could no longer stave off freezing nights, Ice Age communities turned to a darker strategy. At Doli Vestanice in the Czech Republic and other sites, archaeologists have found corpses carefully placed around living spaces. They were not burial offerings, but deliberate sources of bacterial heat. As flesh decomposes, bacteria generate warmth. Early humans arranged recently deceased bodies in layers around sleeping areas. They rotated fresh corpses inward to maintain peak thermal output. Over days, the dead provided a steady source of heat, long after fires had died. This practice required strict social and ritual protocols. Corpses were treated with respect rather than discarded. Elders or shamans led ceremonies to prepare bodies for their secondary role. Community members offered prayers and gifts, transforming a taboo act into a sacred necessity. Written records did not survive, but the careful placement and consistent patterns across sites show this was a well-established custom. By using the dead as radiators, they extended family bonds beyond life, weaving survival into every aspect of their culture. The living and the deceased worked in tandem to face the harshest climate on Earth. How do they manage impossible survival math with the elderly and infirm? Archaeological layers at Sungir in Russia and other frozen sites reveal a grim winter pattern. Elderly individuals appear in burial grounds in far greater numbers during the coldest months. This spike in deaths was no accident, but a calculated decision. The furs, bone marrow, and caloric reserves of aged members were reclaimed to sustain younger hunters and gatherers. One elder's thick fur garments could clothe several children. The calories within that person's body fat could fuel the survival of the band. Communities conducted ritual farewells, often with voluntary participation. Elders sometimes accepted their fate, viewing resource reallocation as a final act of service. These sacrifices were embedded in social contracts. Children who inherited furs or tools took on special duties to honor the memory of their predecessors. Stories of noble elders who chose the greater good reinforced communal values. Generational bonds grew stronger, shaped by these profound decisions. Far from heartless cruelty, this system relied on deep ritual and shared responsibility. By integrating sacrifice into their cultural framework, Ice Age humans managed resources with chilling efficiency while preserving social harmony. What liquid lifeline kept them from freezing from the inside out? Fresh mammoth blood offered a remarkable combination of calories and natural antifreeze. Its high protein and fat content provided over 3,000 calories per liter. The iron and nutrients in the blood helped maintain strength and stave off anemia when plants were buried under ice. To collect this precious resource, Ice Age hunters invented specialized tools. Long scoops carved from mammoth ivory and polished bark vessels kept blood from freezing. Sites in Siberia reveal these containers alongside hunting camps, showing that blood collection was as routine as butchering flesh. Inspired by later Inuit traditions, some communities made blood sausages by mixing mammoth blood with crushed roots or fat and stuffing the mixture into cleaned animal intestines. Eating these sausages created an internal furnace. Protein digestion raised core temperature for hours and provided steady energy far beyond what fire alone could deliver. The need for both meat and blood-shaped hunting patterns. Hunters tracked mammoth herds not only for hides and marrow, but also to secure fresh blood before it cooled. Coordinated hunts aimed to drain blood immediately and process it on the spot. When weather reached its coldest, mammoth blood became as essential as shelter itself. This practice transformed a simple resource into a life-saving tool. By drinking warm blood, they turned a brutal necessity into a form of extreme survival nutrition that kept their bodies from freezing from the inside out. How did they harness every bodily function for warmth? When every drop of heat mattered, Ice Age humans turned to unconventional sources. They designated urination zones inside caves to capture steam warmth. Fresh urine steaming at body temperature could warm a small rock surface. Rocks warmed this way released heat slowly, providing precious minutes of warmth around the hearth. They also collected fecal matter and dried it into a high-temperature fuel. Dried dung burned hotter and longer than some types of wood. Hearth remains at cave sites contain clear evidence of mixed fuels. Burn patterns show layers of dung alternating with branches to maintain steady heat. These waste materials were woven into the cave layout as integrated waste heat systems. Rocks positioned near sleeping areas retained heat from both hearth and steam. Waste was stored in shallow pits lined with stones that radiated warmth as they cooled. Communities developed schedules to maintain continuous waste-driven heating. Teams rotated through waste collection and hearth tending. One group gathered dung and ashes from designated zones while another group stoked the fire. This constant cycle kept the cave interior from plunging to lethal temperatures overnight. By treating human waste as a fuel resource, they turned every bodily function into a survival strategy. This sophisticated approach kept the darkest caves alive with heat generated from the simplest human processes. When firewood ran out, what shockingly organic fuel did they turn to next? At Goff's Cave in England, archaeologists uncovered evidence of systematic fat rendering. Precise cut marks and specialized vessels show that human fat was deliberately extracted, rendered, and stored for use as fuel when wood supplies ran low. Early humans calculated the energy yield of every resource. They learned that tallow rendered from human fat burned hotter and longer than animal fat or wood. Some community members recorded caloric values in the form of notched bones and stone markings. This data guided their choices about who would be selected as a fat source when desperation hit. Rendering centers were set up away from living areas to reduce health risks. Sharpened stone tools separated fat layers from muscle. The fat was then melted in heated pits lined with stones. Clean tallow was poured into carved bowls or hollowed logs. These containers functioned as primitive lamps and warmers. Although this practice involved cannibalism, it was framed as a solemn community service rather than an act of violence. Rituals honored those who provided fat. Ceremonial feasts and storytelling took place before rendering nights, transforming the process into a shared sacrifice that reinforced social bonds. By converting human fat into fuel, they maximized every calorie and degree of warmth. In the direst circumstances, this shocking strategy became a vital part of their thermal management toolkit. What desperate movement kept their blood pumping? Wear patterns on cave floors tell a story of near constant movement. Archaeologists found patches worn smooth by repeated foot traffic and circular formations. These circles mark 8 to 12-hour heat dance sessions where every step generated precious warmth. Communities choreographed rotations so that not everyone danced at once. Groups of dancers moved in timed shifts, allowing core body temperatures to rise by as much as 15 degrees Fahrenheit. When one group grew exhausted, another took over without pause. This relay of motion ensured continuous heat production through the darkest hours. Venus figurines found at these sites may have served as choreography guides. Their exaggerated limbs and curved forms hint at specific poses and movements that maximized friction and blood flow. Positioned near the dance areas, these figurines reminded participants of key steps and rotations. Designated zones provided rest and recovery. Off to the side, exhausted dancers could sit or lie down on warm stones. They regained strength while still retaining body heat. Nearby dancers shielded them from cold air until they were ready to rejoin the circle. These survival raves were not spontaneous celebrations, but deliberate thermal engineering events. Music made from hollow bones or simple percussion maintained rhythm. Light from small fires or torches illuminated hand signals that coordinated the shifts. Together, they created a living system of heat generation driven by dance, sweat, and shared purpose. How did they transform intimacy into a thermal tool? When dance alone could not sustain enough heat, communities turned to more intimate gatherings. Archaeological cave layouts reveal areas set aside as organized heat chambers. These spaces were large enough to hold multiple couples without overcrowding. Communal mating events were timed to coincide with the coldest nights. By pooling body heat in close contact, participants generated warmth far beyond what dance could achieve. Venus figurines with emphasized forms served as instructional aids, guiding partners on positions that maximized skin contact and shared warmth. Social roles and rotations managed these large-scale intimacy sessions. Elders and leaders organized schedules so every adult contributed. Participants rotated through pairs to ensure equal heat distribution and prevent exhaustion. Observers recorded shifts with tally marks on bone fragments, marking who had the most time in the heat chambers. These rituals were as much about survival as they were about community bonds. They reinforced trust and mutual reliance. Rules governed conduct to maintain respect and order, with leaders ensuring that all voices were heard and needs met. By transforming procreation into a thermal tool, Ice Age humans integrated their biological drives with their greatest need for warmth. In the coldest hours, intimacy became a living furnace that burned with both physical heat and social connection. How did reproduction itself become a mobile furnace? Evidence from Pavlov in the Czech Republic and other sites shows birth clusters timed with the seasons. Multiple women gave birth within weeks of each other, creating what can be called maternal heating pods. In these pods, pregnant women slept side by side. During the third trimester, a woman's core temperature naturally rises. By grouping several expectant mothers together, communities created a sustained microclimate warm enough to protect vulnerable infants and mothers from frostbite. Lunar and seasonal markers guided these fertility windows. Community leaders observed moon phases and environmental signs to coordinate conception periods. This planning ensured that pregnancies peaked during the coldest months when the extra body heat was most needed. Once infants arrived, they became tiny heat engines. Shared nursing zones placed babies and mothers at the center of sleeping areas. An infant's higher heat output per pound meant even greater warming effect. As mothers nursed, their combined body heat diffused throughout the group, benefiting everyone. This strategy required careful social coordination. Women not yet pregnant supported mothers by gathering extra fuel and food. Hunters prioritized routes near birthing groups to ensure fresh supplies reached the most vulnerable, and these maternal heating pods, the acts of birth and nursing, became vital components of community survival. What ultimate lesson does this brutal ingenuity leave us? Ice Age humans faced a relentless cold that would kill most of us within hours, yet they survived by mastering a remarkable range of heat strategies. They formed naked body piles to share warmth, used the dead as living radiators, harvested mammoth blood as an internal heater, and even burned human fat when wood ran out. They danced through the night in choreographed marathons, transformed intimacy into survival rituals, and created maternal pods that turned pregnancy into a mobile furnace. Their creativity sprang from sheer desperation. When fire and fur proved insufficient, they discarded taboos and rewrote the rules of human behavior. They used every resource at their disposal, even the most gruesome way to keep the cold at bay. These acts of brutal pragmatism saved lives in a world where simple comforts did not exist. Today, in moments of crisis, we still echo their instincts. We huddle close against cold or fear. We layer blankets and share body heat with loved ones. We organize mutual aid networks in disaster zones and innovate under pressure. The same drive that made our ancestors press naked bodies together in caves fuels modern emergency shelters and community resilience. Picture one final scene, the first pale light of dawn breaking over a frozen valley. A circle of survivors, wrapped in patched furs and blood-stained blankets, stand steaming in the cold air. Their breaths rise like smoke. They have bent every moral, reinvented every custom, and endured through the darkest night. Their will to survive glows brighter than any fire. These cold night innovations reveal a species defined by ruthless pragmatism and boundless ingenuity. From naked heat piles to synchronized pregnancies, Ice Age humans rewrote every rule for survival. Their legacy lives on in our shared drive to adapt, cooperate, and endure, even in the face of unimaginable cold.